Everyone who saw it said, "Such a thing has never been seen or done, not since the day the Israelites came up out of Egypt. Just imagine, we must consider it, take counsel, and speak out." Judges 19:30.
The story of the book of Judges in the Bible occurs between the death of Joshua and the establishment of the monarchy in Israel. It is a period characterized by a repetitive cycle of apostasy, oppression, outcry, deliverance, and peace. But there is a startling passage, specifically between chapters 19 and 21 of Judges, which is one of the darkest and most disturbing sections of the Bible, highlighting the extreme depravity and anarchy that prevailed in Israel during this time. The tragic story begins with a Levite who lived in the mountains of Ephraim. He had a concubine from Bethlehem of Judah, who left him because of infidelity and returned to her father's house. After 4 months, the Levite went to Bethlehem to persuade her to return. The woman's father welcomed the Levite into his home, and he stayed there for 5 days. When the Levite finally departed with his concubine and a servant, they were delayed and ended up seeking shelter in Gibeah, a city of Benjamin. At that time, there was no king in Israel, and hospitality was a vital part of the culture. However, no one welcomed them except an old man, originally from Ephraim, who invited them to stay at his house. The night in Gibeah turned tragic when men of the city, described as sons of Belial, a term indicating great wickedness, surrounded the house and demanded that the owner hand over the Levite to abuse him. The host offered his virgin daughter and the Levite's concubine as alternatives, in a desperate attempt to protect his guest, reflecting the distorted ethic of hospitality of the time. The men of Gibeah refused the offer of the daughter, but took the concubine and raped her throughout the night. In the morning, the concubine was found dead on the doorstep. The Levite, upon finding her, placed her on his donkey and returned home. In an act of extreme and shocking demonstration of the brutality of the event, he cut her body into 12 pieces and sent them to all the tribes of Israel. This action by the Levite caused great outrage throughout Israel. The incident in Gibeah illustrates how deep the moral depravity in Israel was at that time, and serves as a prelude to the events that led to a civil war in the following chapter. The dissection and sending of the pieces of the concubine's body to the tribes of Israel served as a shocking and alarming sign of the state of corruption and anarchy in which the country was found. This horrific act aimed to draw the tribe's attention to the grave injustice and the need for collective action. When the tribes of Israel received the pieces of the woman's body, they were horrified and convened a large assembly before the Lord in Mizpah. All the Israelites, from all the tribes, gathered to hear the Levite recount what happened in Gibeah. His narrative emphasized the brutality and heinous nature of the crime committed by the men of Benjamin. Israel's reaction was unified and decisive. They decided that such an act could not go unpunished. The tribes demanded that the tribe of Benjamin hand over the guilty so that they could be punished. However, the Benjamites refused to hand over the men of Gibeah, choosing instead to protect the transgressors. This refusal led to a civil war. The other tribes of Israel united against Benjamin. The war resulted in great losses for the tribe of Benjamin, almost leading to its extinction. The narrative highlights the gravity of sin and its devastating consequences, not just for the individuals directly involved, but for the entire community. It is a grim reminder of the need for justice, morality, and divinely guided leadership. The war was marked by a great loss of lives and the near annihilation of the tribe of Benjamin. In the battles, the Israelites, following divine guidance, finally managed to defeat the Benjamites, causing great devastation. The tribe of Benjamin was reduced to only 600 men who managed to flee to the desert, to the rock of Rimmon, where they remained for 4 months. The Israelites, in their anger, had sworn not to allow their daughters to marry Benjamites, which threatened the continuity of the tribe of Benjamin itself. Faced with this situation, The other tribes of Israel lamented the possible loss of one of their tribes. They sought a solution to ensure the survival of Benjamin without breaking their oaths. The solution found was complex and morally questionable. They instructed the surviving Benjamites to ambush the young women who danced during an annual festival in Shiloh, to take them as wives. Moreover, they allowed the Benjamites to take wives from the cities that had not sent men to fight against Gibeah. These actions reflect the extreme complexity and moral challenges faced by Israel during that period. There was a constant tension between the pursuit of justice and the preservation of tribal unity and identity within the Israelite Confederation. The end of this story does not offer an easy solution or a clear moral, but presents a vivid portrait of a deeply divided and troubled society. The civil war followed after this heinous crime committed in Gibeah. The tribes of Israel, outraged by the violence inflicted on the Levite's concubine, gathered to administer justice. When the tribe of Benjamin refused to hand over the men of Gibeah responsible for the act, the other tribes of Israel united against Benjamin. The war was brutal and costly for both sides. Initially, the Israelites suffered great losses, even though they were numerically superior. They sought guidance from God, who promised victory. On the third day of combat, the Israelites used an ambush strategy, leading to the devastating defeat of Benjamin. Almost the entire tribe of Benjamin was exterminated, with only 600 men escaping to the desert. After the war, the tribes of Israel mourned the near extinction of the tribe of Benjamin. They had made a vow at Mizpah, promising not to give their daughters in marriage to the men of Benjamin. This put the tribe of Benjamin in a difficult situation, as without women, the tribe would be doomed to disappear. To resolve this dilemma, the Israelites found a solution that involved two questionable actions. First, they attacked the city of Jabesh-Gilead, which had not participated in the assembly at Mizpah, killing everyone except the virgins, who were given as wives to the survivors of Benjamin. Secondly, they allowed the Benjamites to capture women during an annual festival in Shiloh, so they could have wives without breaking the vow made at Mizpah. These events reflect the moral complexity and disorder of the time. The reaction of the other tribes to the sin of Gibeah was initially just, but the subsequent violence and solutions found to preserve the tribe of Benjamin reveal the confusion and difficulty in maintaining justice and morality in times of anarchy. After the Civil War and the actions taken to preserve the tribe of Benjamin, it reflects further on the complexities and moral challenges faced by the tribes of Israel during this tumultuous period. With the drastic measures taken to provide wives for the surviving Benjamites, the people of Israel returned to their lands, each tribe and family to their inheritance. The narrative highlights the pain and fragmentation that the Civil War brought to Israel. The near extinction of one of the tribes of Israel was a grim reminder of what the lack of cohesion and the absence of centralized leadership could entail. The consequences of moral and social anarchy are explicit in the biblical passage. In those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in their own eyes, reflecting the moral and social anarchy of the time. This fact demonstrates the disastrous consequences when a society strays from established moral and legal norms, especially those based on the law and the will of God. The lack of strong and morally integral central leadership is palpable in the story, for without a leader who guides people according to solid ethical and spiritual principles, society tends to chaos and injustice. Moreover, the brutality of the crime committed in Gibeah and the subsequent civil war illustrate the gravity of sin and its widespread consequences, as immoral actions have repercussions not only for the individuals directly involved, but also for the community as a whole. The initial response of the other tribes of Israel to the crime in Gibeah shows a commitment to justice. However, subsequent actions reveal the complexity of maintaining justice and morality in extreme situations, and how the pursuit of justice can, paradoxically, lead to more violence and injustice. This story is a dark portrait of the human condition and the capacity of human beings for evil, demonstrating the need for constant vigilance against moral depravity and the importance of seeking spiritual and moral guidance. This historical account is also a parable about the need for just leadership, the importance of moral and legal principles, and the consequences of moral depravity and anarchy. It is a reminder that, without guidance and commitment to ethical and spiritual values, societies can fall into disorder and violence. This narrative of cycles of apostasy, oppression, outcry, deliverance, and eventually moral decay offers us lessons about respect, love for our neighbors, and the practice of morality and ethics in our society. One of the central messages of Jesus Christ is the commandment to love your neighbor as yourself. The stories of Judges, filled with violence and injustice, deeply contrast with this teaching. They highlight the need to respect the dignity and value of each person, avoiding actions that cause harm or oppression, which translates into treating others with compassion, justice, and empathy, always seeking to promote peace and understanding. We, as a society and God-fearing people, must act righteously, avoiding corruption and injustice, being examples of ethical conduct, showing that it is possible to live with integrity, even in a world often challenging and conflictual. The Book of Judges, with its stories of human failures and the constant need for redemption, reminds us of the importance of seeking divine guidance and wisdom to live ethically and justly. An invitation to reflect on our own actions and to commit ourselves to a life that honors the principles of love, respect, and justice.